what the thought was in the scenario. Oregon, Ohio State, Oklahoma all win out. Alabama and Georgia keep winning. Alabama beats Georgia in the conference championship game. So who's going to be left out? So I think automatically, if that situation happens, you've automatically you have you have two SEC teams. So you're going to have Georgia and Alabama absolutely still in the playoff discussion. If Georgia's only loss is to Alabama and Alabama runs the table, so those two there. You have Ohio State that is. You have Ohio State that if they win out, obviously they're going to make the playoffs. So the discussion goes between a one-loss Oregon team and a undefeated Oklahoma team. I still think Oklahoma would get in over a Oregon simply for the fact that Oklahoma, number one, is going to be undefeated plus a conference championship win would I think go further than that one loss team of Oregon. So I think that in that situation, Oklahoma would get in, but it would be close. There would be a lot of debate. Oklahoma still wouldn't have as good of a win as Oregon would, having beat Ohio State and at their place and being a playoff member and a conference champion of their own. So I think that would be very interesting. I would just lean a little bit towards Oklahoma being an undefeated team. I can't imagine a scenario in which Oklahoma specifically, like they're on borrowed time with the Big 12. So essentially, you can think of it in terms of being an SEC team, and they get left out. Oklahoma gets left out as an undefeated conference championship. It's hard for me to understand that would believe that would happen as well. So let's go through some of the comments, and let's change it a little bit, and let's get back to some specifics around Texas Tech. So some of the things that I think were positive for Oklahoma is played much better on the defensive side of the ball. I think getting Jalen Redmond back was very, very helpful for the Oklahoma defensive line. Played better, not necessarily exactly where you need to be, but I think having those guys back are very helpful. We saw on the defensive end, or I'm sorry, the back end of the defense in terms of the secondary, getting Delaire and Turner-Yell back was very, very profitable. Just in terms of kind of solidifying that back end in the safety position. I think that having Key Lawrence move over to the cornerback position was a very good experiment that went well. So I think once Oklahoma gets to a position where Woody Washington could be back, and like I said, I don't see him being back until Bedlam, maybe the Big 12 championship game. So if he's back, I think it'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma does, because at that point you'll have Key Lawrence has played a little bit more, has a little bit of time under his wings just in terms of that cornerback spot, and we'll see how that goes. So I think it would be a good problem to have, and obviously mentioning DJ Graham, having him back was very, very helpful as well. So I think the bye week for Oklahoma came at about the perfect time. You have a situation where you're able to get a little bit healthier. You're able to rest your mind, rest your body, and I think that's big for Oklahoma as a team that really. And I'm sorry, I got distracted. As a team that that really has improved and really played and played much better. The best defensive they played in about and I don't know, probably about a month. So able to rest your mind, rest your body, and that's beneficial for them going forward for this stretch run in November, which the Oklahoma offense continues to play at a much higher rate, higher efficiency rate than they were previously. Obviously, the insertion of Caleb Williams to the starting lineup has been huge. I believe 12 touchdowns, 1 interception for him over the course of the year. Had 6. I'm sorry, maybe it's 14 because he had 8 and 1, so 14 touchdowns, 1 interception for Caleb Williams over the year. Had 6 against Texas Tech. Obviously, was great to see Spencer Rattler get in there and show what he could do late in the game. He could be a guy that could be needed. You can never predict injuries. So I think the thing that I'm looking for going forward is consistent play. The tackling has to continue to get better on the defensive side of the ball. I think having Marcus Major in here and being effective as he was towards the end of the game, I think gives Oklahoma a little bit more flexibility on the offensive side of the ball to maybe play Eric Gray and Kennedy Brooks a little bit more. Use Eric Gray as more of a pass catcher out of the backfield and have Kennedy Brooks your main 1 and 2 guys in terms of getting carries and see how that split looks. So I think that gives Oklahoma a little bit more in what they need. But I think overall, I think what the one thing that's been missing from this team is leadership. And I think you need some of those guys on the specifically on the defensive side of the ball. You need some of those guys to step up. A Nick Benito, a Perion Winfrey, a Isaiah Thomas. Those guys have to continue to step up to be the leaders that Oklahoma needs them to be on the defensive side of the ball. And as much as it hurts, Oklahoma needs to have Oklahoma State win and win these last few games. So Oklahoma State they go to West Virginia this Saturday. Then they host TCU and then play at Texas Tech prior to Bedlam. So I think as much as it pains you to even think about this, I think Oklahoma should be Oklahoma State fans. If Oklahoma State, if they win those games, they could see I don't know. Even you can see Oklahoma State getting up to as much as 5 or 6 in the polls before Bedlam, and that could be one of the biggest Bedlam games we've seen in quite some time in terms of just ranked versus ranked. So, and seeing Baylor do that as well. Baylor has TCU this weekend, so it will be beneficial for Oklahoma from a playoff perspective, from a Big 12 championship perspective, just to have what the perception is of Oklahoma moving forward will be really good. So I think that will be interesting as well. So some comments from Christopher Foote. Oklahoma's isn't going to be undefeated. I think based on the way they're playing right now, I think it's hard to tell. I mean, I think before the Texas Tech game, I had a lot of concern, I guess is the right way to put it, just in terms of if Oklahoma was able to win the rest of their games. But yes, I think Oklahoma has the opportunity. They're good enough, whether they're able to do it and put it together and tackle and everything, do everything that they need to do on the defensive side of the ball is going to be interesting to see what they're able to do. Let's see. If there's any questions or comments or anything like that. Henry, thanks for joining in here with us. I appreciate you. Appreciate you here. Let's see. Going through the comments here. I don't really see any other questions. Weston has a question here. We would have to win our games by 28 plus if Oregon wins out. I don't know. I think that the narrative would be much different because right now Oklahoma has a horrible resume in terms of the teams that they've beaten. Now, if you get into a situation where you beat 2 top 12 teams on the road, and then you potentially beat one of those teams again, which probably top 15 at that point at the worst. So I think that is something that would be in Oklahoma's favor versus Oregon. Oregon's probably not going to have another top 25 win for the remainder of the year. Yes, they've got Utah. Yes, they've got Washington, and then probably either a Utah and or but I have a Utah or an Arizona State in the Pac-12 championship game. But none of those teams are ranked, and where Oklahoma will have 3 ranked wins. So that's what I think would give Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt over that. So. Some questions about injuries. I haven't heard anything specifically about Willie Washington, but the things I have heard is that he is pretty far away. Oklahoma actually might get Theo Weiss back against Baylor, so I think that would be good from an offensive perspective. But haven't really seen anything definitively on winning Washington yet. Let's see. Always a lot of discussion on the playoffs, and I think that's one of the most interesting things about these rankings that come out. The first one, the first rankings and the last ones are always the most scrutinized of the group. So I think that will be I think that will be interesting. So just to see what that happens as well. So but yeah, Oklahoma put together their best total package win of the season against Texas Tech. I mean, you say what you will about Texas Tech, but they came into the game 5-3. They have a close loss against Kansas State. A close loss, but they beat West Virginia, but they don't have a great resume outside of that. So we'll see what happens. Weston don't really have a score prediction just yet. Something we might do next week as it gets closer to the game. But just kind of a scouting report on Baylor. They remind me a lot of that a team a few years ago where Jalen Hurts led Oklahoma to a comeback win in that game, and obviously beat Baylor in the conference championship game. So very reminiscent of there. They got a quarterback that doesn't make a lot of mistakes, even though he did throw 2 interceptions against Texas and only threw one the previous games of the season. So I think that he's a solid player. They got a good running game. Defense is really solid, strong tackling, very assignment sound. So it's going to be a tough game. I think it'll be a really really tough game for Oklahoma to win, but it's a game that they're going to have to win, especially if they want to be able to do what they want to do, which is get to the playoffs, possibly win a national championship. That's a team that they've got to beat. So absolutely. But we'll get into that. I think so. Jimmy's a good question. Does Baylor have the best defense in the Big 12? It's close. It's really close. I would say it's between Oklahoma State and Baylor at this point. I would give a slight, and I just mean slight, edge to Oklahoma State right now, but I think Baylor does have a really, really good defense. So